Okay, shalom. It is just a minute or two before 6 o'clock. Just now opening up for our live stream on the book of Galatians, and we will be starting in a little while. So I'm going to take a few minutes and wait for people to come on who want to join us live. And in the meantime, we'll sit here and sort of vamp for a little bit, waiting for everyone else to get on. Okay. I'll wait till a little bit after 6 o'clock before I start the regular spiel. In the meantime, the chat box is open. If you want to go to the chat window there, type in your name, say hello, and we can talk. And it's the only way I have of knowing who's there and who's paying attention. Because I don't necessarily get to see all the viewer numbers. In fact, I usually don't look at that screen, see how many people are on. It's more along the lines of who's chatting. Shalom Ruchama. Good question as far as where we're meeting for the High Holy Days. Other than Tashlich, nothing else is still set. I have a message out to my normal contact at the church to see what, if anything, we can get done over there. I haven't called today and left a message, and it appears that nobody was there. So didn't hear back from anybody, so I'm going to have to be a little more insistent tomorrow. Try to get an answer, because we're down to the wire, and I don't know, what we're going to do as far as the location. So it's going to be, just more of the year that wasn't, as far as everything is going on. I'll tell you one thing. A lot of people were not as happy with the location we have. It's it's an older room. It's we're renting space in somebody else's place, and so we just don't get to spread out and own the place. And some people are a little less than pleased with that. The upside is the price is really, really good, and the somebody else takes care of all the maintenance and paying the bills. So it's personally, I think we come out way ahead on the deal. But the down part is, of course, is when they're shut down because of this. We can't just say, we're gonna meet anyways. We're gonna defy all the civil authorities, as we probably should. But we're gonna get other people in trouble that we're not. We're not necessarily talking for or speaking for when we're doing all this. So I'm a little constrained, but anyways, make a short story long. It's a little after 6 o'clock, and I'll get started on my regular spiel. Then we can get into the study. Welcome to Simchat Yeshua Messianic Fellowship. This is our Wednesday evening live chat, and we're going through the book of Galatians right now. And we're going to finish up chapter 3 today, and end up with a very clear statement as to why it's unnecessary to convert to anything, especially if you're a Gentile. We have been going through the first 3 chapters have been pretty strenuous, and I'm probably going to maintain that, because for me, my experience has been with this, especially in dealing with going to talking to prisoners and stuff. They're telling me that they get beat up all the time by well-meaning but misinformed fellow believers who try to use Galatians as a proof text that God got rid of his commandments, and that because of Jesus we no longer have a Torah to listen to or to follow. And so it's very, very, very critical, and they suffer a lot because of that. Believe it or not, there's a little bit of attitude that goes on in prisons, and people will pick on people for every kind of reason imaginable. And so, because the Christian groups are much larger as far as number of people, there's a sense of you know more power than the small messianic group that we do there, and so they take it upon themselves to pick on the messianics, and so that's why it's so critical in my mind that we need to win the arguments. We need to know the arguments, and we need to know how to win them, and that's why I keep straining on certain points over and over and over again through the studies so far. And my apologies for repeating it so much or for keep straining on these things, but it's so very critical that we win the arguments. It's not good enough to be a victim of somebody else's attitude. Um, we need to win. Okay, and that's really what's going on. So let me get back to some of the basics. Let me do my YouTube thing. Please like, subscribe, and tell others about the channel. And like, subscribe. Something else there I was missing again, but um, and oh yeah, ring the bell for to note. If you want notification for when the meetings start, um, ring the bell there. And also, if you wish to support this congregation or this channel, you can go to our website, Simchat Yeshua Messianic Fellowship. Sorry, that's the name of the congregation. The website is simchatyeshua.org. Um, okay, let me get to that in a second, Ruhama. Um, at simchatyeshua.org. That's SYMCHATYESHUA.org. And we have a website. You can donate to the congregation or to the channel through the website, and you can also pick up. You should be getting copies of the handouts that go with each one of these lectures. Um, I usually try to get them up and posted sometime before the actual study. It's kind of funny. You would think that being somewhat sequestered because of all the political rules, that I'd have far more time to do things and to catch up on things and so on. And it just doesn't work that way. It seems like mentally when I'm off, I'm just mentally off, and it's kind of hard to get focused and to get busy. Anyways, make a short story long. You should have handouts, and um, I should be. I haven't put out a new bulletin for a couple weeks simply because there hasn't been a whole lot new going on other than the readings for the week. So, God willing, I'll be doing that again this week. Something new for us, if I can remember to get it done. So we also have a Facebook page. That's Simchat Yeshua. Again, SIMCHATYESHUA. No other, just that is us. Our channel is Simchat Yeshua West Covina. Sorry, Simchat Yeshua Messianic Fellowship West Covina, simply because there just happens to be another congregation, maybe all of 50 miles away from us, with also uses the name Simchat Yeshua. Um, so in order to save the confusion as far as the channel is concerned, we specified West Covina, which is where we'll eventually go back to meeting when we get the chance to do that. Okay. Now, Barbara, your question. Okay, you got a rebuttal. Jesus made all things new. The difficulty with that is, yes, he made all things new, but what did he make new? Okay, what all things did he make new? Okay, did Yeshua come? Jesus is English. Yeshua is Hebrew. We often use Hebrew proper names because it's just part of the mindset getting into the language. It's so important to understand the language of the Bible and the nuances and the phraseology in that language. So Yeshua did make all things new. That's what he says. Okay, but what was it that was made new? Okay, does that mean that he threw out God's commandments? And we have a statement completely completely different to that in Matthew 5:17, where he says, he came not to destroy the law and the prophets, but he came to fulfill. Okay. Now there's a counter argument people try to use. Well, the word fulfill means to terminate, to end, or to make complete. With a view to doing to not needing it any longer. The problem with that is the first part of the statement completely belies that definition and argument. So just use the simple plain text and just use the simple logic. How can Yeshua start off with saying he's not coming to destroy the law and the prophets, if you want to finish the statement by interpreting him to mean, but we're getting rid of the law and the prophets and starting something different? Okay, it doesn't work. Okay, the logic doesn't work and the language doesn't work. And the Greek word there for to fulfill, pleroo, is the root word, and I don't remember off the top of my head what the exact version of pleroo is in play with that statement, but it basically means to make full. Okay, and fulfill is a great way of explaining it in English, but it makes it full. In other words, not to complete, but to make it of maximum availability and maximum usefulness. Okay, so if you follow me on that, that's basically what we're talking about when it comes to make full. Now, let's get started because I've been yakking for 10 minutes and haven't said anything yet. Okay, let me bring up this. We're going to cover our text. We're going to be starting in verse 29. Sorry, no. Okay, yeah, we're starting in verse 26 for our text, but I'm going to start in verse 23 of Galatians chapter 3 just to make a running start on this. Okay. Now, before the time for this trusting faithfulness came, we were imprisoned in subjection to the system which results from perverting the Torah into legalism, kept under guard until the yet to come trusting faithfulness would be revealed. Dr. Stern's translation, and he's careful trying to avoid words that, and trying to make a certain point of view that the translation gets kind of thick. Let me move over to, that's not what I had in mind. Come on, you can do this. Where are we? New King James. As a general rule, I like this translation better. The Complete Jewish Bible is a good interpretation, and notice I didn't say translation, but interpretation, because Dr. Stern himself admits that in straining over the terminology, he ended up with more of an interpretation than a direct translation. And Dr. Stern, to his credit, was trying very hard to avoid certain terminology pitfalls and to make careful explanation of certain concepts and dealing with certain things that were going on back in the early 80s when he did this translation. So, for example, there was the Now Faith movement going on in a lot of churches, which thoroughly perverted the understanding of the word faith. And so Dr. Stern didn't want to collide with that understanding, so he chose trust as a word to use instead of faith, which I think works really well. But also then you end up with all the other permutations in the meaning and the use of the word faith, such as faithfulness and the perversion of the commandments of God by people who are trying to misinterpret, to say that that either the commandments are done away with, that they don't mean what they say they mean. And so Dr. Stern went really far out of the way to try to straighten out all the terminology, and so you give him credit for trying really hard on that. And some things he worked really well, and others it was a little. He makes his translation or his interpretive work rather clunky to read. So let me go to New King James and start off here. For you are all sons of God through faith in Christ Jesus. For as many of you were baptized into Christ have put on Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free. There is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. And if you are Christ's, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Oops, that's today's. Yeah, I'm sorry, I messed up. Okay, I'll forget the run up. Let's just go with that. Okay. um, all right, so we're dealing with the central issue of the book of Galatians is you don't need to be a Pharisee to belong to the family of God. That is the root contention of what the letter addresses. Not that God is through with his commandments, and not that we throw away the Old Testament and we live only as a New Testament mentality. We are very much still rooted in the commandments of God and in what God has said is true and just and right all along. So that did not change. Okay. Um, but we but the issue is, and this is this comes from Acts 15. The letter to the Galatians is a sister issue covering the same topic and problems. The difference is Paul's writing to a group he had been to and spoke to and contended to in front of their faces. Now he's writing a letter reminding them of all the stuff that they talked about. And so because of that, the great theologian that Paul he was not very great at writing letters or a standalone document, which covers all the arguments and issues in the document along with his contentions for people to remember. And so a lot of Paul's letters are left to creative reinterpretation of what he's meaning when he's saying certain things. And Galatians is probably one of the most misinterpreted as a result. Paul's only talking about hinting at things in his letter that was adequately discussed in person. And so one of the things we got to talk about is the use of the word law in Greek nomos, one version or another of the word nomos. And he uses it about 4 different ways in all his writings, and 2 of them he uses in Galatians. The law meaning God's commandments, or what we would usually refer to as Torah, the first 5 books, or Tanakh, which is the whole of what we call the Hebrew Bible, or in Christianity you call it the Old Testament. And the other meaning of the use of the word law is the Pharisee rules. And I'm careful to use the word rules there and not Pharisee law, because I don't want to intermix any concept of law meaning God's commandments versus the rules that the Pharisees established for themselves. So what happened was the gist of the problem. The root is in Acts 15, but this also carried out in its full extent in Galatians and also to a great degree in Romans. People came along, claimed that they belonged to the host congregation, the main shul in Jerusalem, from where you get the phrase of James in the Galatian letter. People came along claiming they had the authority from James, from the Jerusalem congregation, saying, "Oh no, you are not fully part of the family yet. You cannot belong to God unless you are Pharisees like us. Therefore, you must do this conversion process, the last item of which is a circumcision. And otherwise, you're just not there. You're just not right. You just don't belong." And that's the argument they gave. It's a very emotionally tinged argument, and it preys on the sense of inadequacy that Gentiles often have in Messianic circles. Part of that is just simply part of the learning curve, and part of it there is some super Semitism, not anti-Semitism, but super Semitism in Messianic circles that doesn't belong there, but nonetheless it happens. And there are some Jews that run around in Messianic circles putting Gentiles down for being, half the value or just not all there and stuff like that. And so Gentiles get kind of prone to being suckered into these arguments and saying, oh, what you're missing in modern terms is you need to make the conversion to Orthodox because otherwise you're really not part of the family of God. And that's the argument. Paul's counter argument says if you volunteer to take that vow to become a Pharisee or Orthodox in the modern context, you obligate yourself to do all of it. Okay, which means all the rules, all the regulations, all the extra requirements, all the stuff that's not scriptural, but sociological, cultural, that goes on with orthodoxy or in Pharisaism. You obligate yourself if you make that conversion to do all of that because you give your word and God expects you to keep your word. So Paul's argument is, why bother trying? And the argument basically culminates in our section that we're reading today, that you are already in the family. There's nothing that can be done to make you more family than what's already there. Okay, and Paul pointed out already that you have the Spirit of God in you. You've seen miracles happen around you, so there's no reason to add something man-made to complete what God has already done. Okay, so so the bottom line with that is, what's a Gentile to do? Well, Acts 15 answered the question. Okay, verse 21 says, go to a synagogue and learn Moses. In other words, go to a synagogue where they teach the commandments of God and grow into them, learn how to do them. Okay, and that's your chore as a Gentile. You're not free to live willy-nilly any way you want, but you are free to have the space to learn. And it's happened many times where we've had discussions and conversations with Gentiles who are new to the movement, and it says, I'm not so sure about this kosher thing. So okay, give it time. We don't pressure anybody. We don't require that anybody live up to our expectations right away. That's between them and God, and that's the timing and the methodology and the process are between God and that person. So it's not for us to complain or to contend or to tell somebody that they're not good enough yet. Okay, so let's get to our text, starting off with a commentary. Okay, you have already received what you so desperately and are seeking to be a part of the people of God. I'm sorry. I used to be a good reader, honest. You have already received what you so desperately are seeking, to be a part of the people of God. You are already a part of Israel, and there is no distinction between you and the natural born, etc. You are fully sons and daughters. Okay, good commentary. Obviously, it's here. That's why it's a good commentary. Okay, you're already a part of Israel. You have everything you need. And what does Torah say about the Gentile, someone from the nations who comes and wants to be close to God? Okay, they're to walk in the commandments of God, and you are to treat them as if somebody who is native born. In this, both Pharisaism and modern Orthodox refuse the command of God because they will not trust a Gentile. Even if they go through all the conversion process, they are not trusted. And then the Pharisee as well as the modern Orthodox do not trust a Gentile conversion. Even though they are legally required to accept them, it doesn't work that way. Okay, now to our text, verse 26. For you are all sons of God through faith in Christ Jesus. Greek New Testament, Englishman's Greek New Testament. For all sons of God you are through faith in Christ Jesus. Okay. I always like throwing that in just because sometimes the original syntax gives the availability for maybe a different way of interpreting and interpreting the meaning of the text. So that's where we have it. That's why we have it here. We are all sons. Bridges from the tutor in verses 24 to 25, meaning even Gentiles who believe are adopted sons in God's kingdom. Thus, if already God's children, ritual conversion to Parush or Pharisee is unnecessary, which is the main point of Paul's letter. Okay, since Abraham's, and that's really, we missed the point on the tutor from last week. Because the English translation is horrible. It says that God's commandments were a tutor to bring you to Messiah or to the point of Messiah. It gives the impression that in the English translation that once Messiah came, there was no longer a tutor. Okay. The difficulty is when a person becomes of age in Greek society or in Roman society back then. Yeah, you basically you put away the pedagogue, the one who was teaching or guiding the child. They're off, but the implication is that the child is never free of what the tutor taught, and that's the point that gets missed in the trying to translate. To bring us to Christ, meaning that once Messiah came and now Torah is gone away with. That's not the point, because that's not the point of the tutor. The tutor was to instruct the child, the boy, in how to be a man, how to behave as a man. So once you're grown up and you no longer have the tutor, the intent is that you will live as the tutor taught you to live. In other words, you live how the Torah teaches you to live. It doesn't exclude the wonderful salvation we have in Messiah, but it gives us the means of how we walk with God now that we are believers. Okay, so the tutor was to teach us it was to teach us a lifetime of right behavior. Okay, so okay. Little indent there. Since Abraham's blessing is fulfilled in the bestowal of the Spirit, such as in verse 14, an intimate connection is established between sonship and receipt of the Spirit. For all who are being led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. And if children, heirs, also heirs of God and fellow heirs with the Messiah. Okay, out of Romans 8 citations. This also includes modern Orthodox or Messianic conversions as unnecessary. Okay, if we are family, we are already there. If we already belong to God, there's nothing a man-made system of religious observance can add to make you more family, to make you more a child of God. Okay, that's the point. That's the point. Okay, and yes, I keep pounding on that, but it's a huge pull. It's an emotional pull, but for people who are unsettled in their identity, the people can manipulate you into thinking you're not really quite right yet. Okay, and the conversion to Pharisaism, the conversion to Orthodox in modern times, and this idea is actually so pervasive. There's an association of Messianic congregations up in the Northeast, around New York and New England area, that actually want to make Gentiles do a Messianic version of a conversion. Why? I don't know. There's nothing you can add to what a person is when they walk with Messiah. So why would you do this? Other than the fact that you're trying to please people who are never, ever, ever going to be pleased with you anyways. Okay, so to be baptized, my Greek is horrible. Don't hate me for that. Okay, to dip repeatedly, to immerse, to submerge, or a vessel sunk. Talking about ships, by the way. To cleanse by dipping or submerging, to wash, to make clean with water, to wash oneself, to bathe, or to overwhelm. Now, if you look at this definition, it kind of answers to you just as a little sideline. I grew up Lutheran, and there was always a discussion within Lutheranism acknowledging that there's three basic forms throughout the greater Christianity of how one does a baptism, and we used to talk about that as the sprinkle, splash, and dip. Okay, because some church traditions are to just take some water and sprinkle it on the baby. Other associations will take a cup or a bowl or something, and they will drain it off the top of the baby's head as it's lying down, so you don't obviously put water on the baby's face. But and the other is to submerge, to dip. And so hopefully this definition kind of helps explain what the word itself is aiming for. Okay, since tevilah, or mikveh, or baptism, was the exterior sign of the new life within, Shaul makes this the only proper act that can signify that new life. Again, in context with the entirety of the letter, becoming a Perush, a Pharisee, is not the sign of salvation. Only the mikveh will be accepted. Further, to put on Messiah is not to become a Perush, but to take on Messiah's character. The circumcision of the heart provided by Messiah has already been accomplished, obviating the foreskin required by the Prushim for entry into the family. Okay, so that's a great commentary. Okay, let's move on to verse 28. By the way, questions, comments, rebukes, I will take them all. So if there's any questions, comments, or rebukes along the line, please put them in. I'll get to them as soon as I remember to look. And also, especially if you run into a question or something towards the end, I don't want to cut off and end our session without having to deal with that, without getting to deal with that. It's the stuff I like to do. Okay, verse 28. There's neither Jew nor Greek, there's neither slave nor free, there's neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. Okay. English from Greek New Testament. There is not Jew nor Greek, there is not bondman nor free, there is not male and female, for all you one are in Christ Jesus. Okay. Little sidestep with looking at Zephaniah 3:9. For then I will restore to the peoples a pure language, that they all may call on the name of the Lord to serve him with one accord. In other words, this is God's design, that we will all be in one accord, in one, all together calling on the name of God and using a pure language. Okay. For those of you that are liking to use colorful language when you're talking about this or that, remember our goal is to have a pure language. Okay. When it comes to salvation, that is receiving the promise, there is no longer any favored or preferred status. But does this mean there are permissive differences in how you live? All descendants of Jacob, Israel, were given promised inheritance rights in the future resurrection, which will one day blossom through life in the physical land of Israel and in the teachings of the written Torah. Gentiles must come in with trusting faith in Yehovah, obeying the written commandments just like Jews. There is no difference in how one approaches Yehovah, just as Peter in the book of Acts related it, saying, "And Elohim, who knows the heart, bore witness to them, giving them the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, just as he also did to us. And he made no distinction between us and them, cleansing their heart by faith. Now therefore, why do we put Elohim to the test by placing upon the neck of the disciples a yoke of Pharisaism, which neither our fathers nor we have been able to bear? but we believing that we are saved through the grace teachings of the Master Yeshua, in the same way they also are. Okay, um, I'm not as familiar with this translation quoted here, but it covers all the bases what we need to understand. Um, okay, the point is, it was understood that God made no difference between Jew and Gentile, calling all to restoration and to salvation and to being indwelled with the Holy Spirit. Therefore, who are we to make distinctions where God did not? Okay, very important. Okay. Um, yeah, I do go back and forth between the you got to be converted to be proper argument and the Yeshua got rid of all the commandments argument. So, yeah, I do flop back and forth on that. Okay, big commentary from Dr. Stern. Gentiles who by trusting in Yeshua are staying faithful to him have become children of God, who have immersed themselves into the Messiah, who have clothed themselves with the Messiah, are equal partners with Jews in the body of the Messiah, declared righteous by God without their having to adopt any further Jewish distinctives. This is a point Shaul makes repeatedly in his writings, and there's quite a good list of that. And these references do not exhaust the list. Many other verses, especially in Romans, express the same idea. Therefore, Jewish and Gentile believers must treat each other as equals before God, of equal worth as human beings. So must believing slaves and freemen, and likewise believing men and women. And that is really all this verse has to say. But nothing in the New Testament prevents a Jewish believer from choosing to worship with Gentile believers in a Gentile-oriented church. Likewise, nothing prevents a Gentile believer from choosing to worship with Jewish believers in a Messianic Jewish congregation. In either situation, what the New Testament mandates is fellowship and equality between Jews and Gentiles in the body. Neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slaves nor freemen, neither male nor female. The three pairs in this verse reflect the words spoken by free Jewish men in their morning prayers. See, for example, from the Hertz prayer book. And these are the three phrases. Praised be you, Adonai our God, King of the universe, because you have not made me a Gentile. Praised are you, Adonai our God, King of the universe, because you have not made me a woman. Praised be you, Adonai our God, King of the universe, because you have not made me a slave. It's kind of interesting that those 3 points are in the traditional prayers, in the very early morning prayers. And those are the very 3 things that Paul picked out of his brain or was inspired to put out. And which, by the way, these 3 blessings, whether you like them or not, were part of the Pharisaic custom. It was normal to, as amongst your morning routine, when you're getting up in the morning, you would be reciting these things, and usually very early in the morning, after you say the Modeh Ani, and you put enough clothes on to where you can start, but before you tie on your tefillin and put on your tzitzit, that you'd be saying blessings like this, because the Jewish mentality is that God's commandments are only for Jews. And if you're a Gentile keeping the commandments of God, you're actually angering God because you're not fulfilling your role, which according to traditional statements, the role of the Gentile is basically to be fodder for the hellfire. Not a very kind attitude, but that's there. Okay. Before we get too far along, I do want to back up on something, if I can remember what it was now. Okay, the comment, nothing prevents, see, but nothing in the New Testament prevents a Jewish believer from choosing to worship with Gentile believers in a Gentile-oriented church. That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. But the part of the rest of the idea, though, is it does not exclude a Jew from walking in the commandments of God as delivered in his Bible. Okay, that part still has to be true. But if you wish, if you really do prefer a Gentile approach, that's okay. Just don't forget, you're still obligated to walk in God's ways. You're still obligated to keep the commandments, even if you're Jewish, even though you're hanging out in your a Gentile congregation, because they're also believers and they also have the Spirit of God in them. Okay. The biggest difficulty is a lot of Gentile believers are mistaught as to the importance and the place of God's commandments in the life of the believer, which is, of course, why we have so much arguments over the Galatians. Okay. Last paragraph on this section. Likewise, Gentiles and women were limited to certain parts of the temple area, such as in Ephesians 2:14. The implication that free Jewish men have special status with God is avoided by most Orthodox Jewish explanations of these prayers, although criticism from within Judaism has not been lacking. That's talking about the three blessings up there. In any case, Shaul, with sweeping finality, says that in the body of Messiah, God has abolished such presumptive distinctions of status. Okay. Then last verse here. And if you are Christ's, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Okay, last reminder to get it in ahead of time. If you have any questions, comments, rebukes, please get them going so we can... Whoops, wrong thing. Hold on here. There we are. Okay, just want to make sure that where I'm not missing somebody. Okay. Get your questions, comments, and rebukes in. We'll be done in a few minutes, so I don't want to, miss anything. Okay, if you're Christ, you're Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Okay, if you Christ's, then Abraham's seed you are, and according to the promise, heirs. There's another one. I keep saying this, but I keep tripping out on it because I just hear this little Yoda voice, speaking some of the Greek text in its word-for-word format like this. They may have gotten Yoda's syntax from Greek, putting the verbs at the end of the phrase so many times. Anyways, never mind. Epaglion, for promise, an announcement, a promise, the act of promising, a promise given or to be given, a promised good or blessing. The word heirs is kieronomi, nomoi. One who receives by lot, an heir in messianic usage, one who receives his allotted possession by right of sonship, one who has acquired or obtained the portion allotted to him. Okay. In other words, the heir, somebody who gets something. Okay. Just as verse 14 shows Abraham's blessing being shown in the gift of God, God's Spirit, the blessing also comes in being declared part of the family, no longer an outsider. Finally, if you are already in the family, Pharisaism or modern orthodoxy is not needed to get you where you already are. Okay? And this is part of the understanding in contending with those who think to convert you to their ism. You already have everything you need. There's no need for anything else. And so don't allow yourself to get sucked into the mentality of thinking you need more. Okay, the only thing we need more is obedience to God and His commandments. But as far as all the extra rules and extra isms that are out there, nothing. So there's nothing of Pharisaism or orthodoxy that's necessary that we don't already have. Okay. And that's, you want to contend for that argument. Whether Jewish or Gentile, if you belong to the Messiah, you are seed of Abraham in these senses. 1, you are one with the Messiah, who is the seed in the midrashic sense of verse 16. Okay, remember, midrash is a commentary. So in the commentary sense, Um, we're the seed. We're part of this. We belong to the seed of Messiah. Um, because the promise of Messiah was that all the nations of the world would be blessed in him and in Abraham as a descendant. Okay, 2. By having the same kind of trusting faithfulness that Abraham had, you prove yourself his spiritual descendants. Okay, so Abraham believed God and it was accounted to him for righteousness. What happened immediately after that moment? What is the first thing God told him to do once Abraham believed and it was accounted to him for righteousness? He said, go and circumcise. Okay? Why? Because that was the beginning basis of all the commandments. Okay? Everything in Abraham's case hinged on the circumcision being the point of obedience that was necessary for all the other commandments to function. Okay? Now, as Gentiles, does that mean we have to go out and get circumcisions? The answer is immediately no. Why? Because we're told in Jeremiah that we have the circumcision of the heart. Okay, so we have the circumcision of the heart. Therefore, we have what's necessary to be indwelled with the Spirit of God. If you find at some later date that God is saying now's the time to get that cut done, then it's time to get it done. But you're not under an obligation where you have to do it whether you like it or not, and it's got to be now, or God's not going to like you, and the community will throw you out, and dumb arguments like that. Um, if the time comes, and I'm not saying when, but if the time comes, um, God calls on you to do a physical circumcision, then that's the time to pursue it. But until then, don't feel pressured in any way, shape, or form. Okay. Thus, somehow I managed to miss a line in there. Okay. It's not that I haven't done this before, and it's not that I haven't reviewed this already, but okay. Um, you're joined to Israel, who are Abraham's physical seed. Thus you are heirs according to the promise of verse 18. So you belong, a Gentile belongs equally as much as anyone who is native born. Thus, are Gentiles full-fledged children of Abraham, or are they second-class children? Okay, here's the difficulty. Within some Messianic circles and some of the largest uh, um, groups of Messianic organizations, they treat Gentiles as if they're second-class citizens, and it was really egregious. It's been, I don't know, 18 years ago or so, where this all was happening, and we used to be members as a congregation. Our congregation was a member of both these organizations. We ended up quitting both of them solely because of the way they looked at Gentiles and the way they treated Gentiles. One said Gentiles can join, but they're only half voting members compared to Jews. And the other ones just flat out said that Gentiles are not of the same status and stature of Jews in the Messianic community. Both of which we reject, both of which gave us rise to quit them, and we've never really looked back. And every time I've run into somebody who insists that we should try to join up with them again, I ask them whether or not they've changed their attitude towards Gentiles, and so far they haven't. So we have no impetus, no desire to be a part of that kind of a thing. And we prefer, um, I'm going to say this rather impolitely, so forget it. All right, let me move on. Last paragraph. Thus you are heirs according to the promise of verses 8 and 18. Are Gentiles, I just mentioned, yeah, okay. Are Gentiles full-fledged children of Abraham, or are they second-class citizens? Maimonides answered a comparable question from a Gentile convert to Judaism. In his letter to Avadia the proselyte, he advised, you are to say, our God and God of our fathers, because Abraham is your father. The letter is quoted at length in Romans 4:16. Shaul is equally insistent on the full equality of Gentile believers in the Messiah. It's kind of interesting that Maimonides would make this statement. Of course, he's much later than Yeshua's time. Um, Maimonides was in the Middle Ages, um, and so they had a different attitude then. If you look through the Mishnah and the Talmud, you're going to find much less kind words towards Gentile converts. Um, Apparently, because of business advantages, there were Gentiles who wanted to convert to become Jews in order to progress financially. And so there was always a lot of leeriness to Gentiles converting within the non-week. But we have a few more months before we're done with Galatians. But it's something to start thinking about what we going to do next. So in the meantime, look up our website, simchatyeshua.org. That's SIMCHATYESHUA. This is Simchat Yeshua Messianic Fellowship, based out of West Covina, California. We also have a Facebook page, Simchat Yeshua, and you can remember to like us on the Facebook page, not the Facebook, but the YouTube page. Like us. Like us. Boy, I'm pulling a Biden. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be reminded when things go live. And if you feel like donating, you can donate through our congregation website, simchatyeshua.org. If you wish to support the channel or the congregation, feel free to do so. If not, we'll still be here. It's okay. Our God supplies, so I'm in no position to say that God's work can't continue unless you give us money. So that's not going to happen. So, anyways, anything. So we're about ready to close down. I am going to go silent for a minute or two, just in case, because I don't want what we're talking about here to get cut off by shutting this off right away. So, God bless you. Shalom. High Holy Days. We're supposed to be meeting. We still don't have a location set. Still trying to get from the congregation where we rent space to whether or not we can meet there. If not, we have an alternative place in mind, but we don't want to start advertising that until we're sure that we can't go to our regular spot. So we'll let you know when we know. Shalom. God bless you. Take care, and we'll see you next week here, if not on Shabbat.